Ready? Great. Here we are today at the HR Business Services Committee on Tuesday, October 11th, 2020, and we have when we look at our agenda, number one, we have no guest presentation for this meeting, so we'll move on to the departmental reports, and we'll start out with human resource.
Thank you. So you can see there the staffing updates, picking up non-certified staff, which is a good thing because that is definitely where we are lacking. So we continue to push forward with that. Some updates, the HR manager, myself, and Simone have been meeting with each of the principals to go over all their budgeting and staffing lists, making sure that we have them budgeted correctly, that we have the staff in the right building, and all of our systems kind of are meshing, so as we get into budgeting season come the end of this year in January, that we have a very clean and accurate slate to move forward to work with those principals. So that's been really helpful, and we've learned a lot. Simone has taught me a lot about budget code, so I'm happy to do it, and it's really nice for us to be able to come together with those principals and provide that.
Are you doing that individually with each principal or kind of an each site?
Individually,
Okay.
yeah, for each site.
It's been amazing.
Yeah, I bet it has been.
They've commented that they really appreciate the opportunity to go deep with learning and excited.
Are the principals learning a lot too?
Yes.
Very much.
Good.
Oh, yes.
And then once we're done with the principals, we'll move on to the other departments that don't necessarily have a site specific. They might have sites in other areas, or they go to different buildings. So we'll work with them through their department budgets as well with their staffing, just to make sure that we have everybody coded correctly and everybody assigned where they need to be assigned. I met last week or the week before with the Career Force Director, Elena Fauché, to talk about how we can partner or utilize some of their services to fill some of our non-certified staff positions. We had a very good discussion. I was able to send her some of the flyers that we've created so that they can hand them out to their clients. They are going to be starting some in-person job meetings where they have maybe a business come in and kind of talk about the jobs that they have. And so we're hopefully going to get on that list so that we can go down and present to their clients just the positions that we have. So moving forward with that, and then we do have a job fair coming up next week in Cloquet. And then we are also going to be meeting with College of St. Scholastica along with some other of the district leaders to talk about their Grow Your Own program. So that will be helpful, I think, not only for the certified staff, but they also talk about paraprofessionals and what we can do there. So really looking forward to finding out what they've got. Teachers on Call is continuing to recruiting paraprofessionals. That has been our lowest fill rate area, but I do see that that is climbing slowly but surely. So I know that they've been really working hard, and they have billboards out and ads on the radio, and they're doing a lot of recruitment things right now for that. So I know Melanie, who is the Teachers on Call staff person that sits in our building here, she has been going out to the little book houses that are around. I don't know.
Oh, the little library.
Little libraries, yeah. And putting little flyers in there about Teachers on Call and doing some different things with their flyers and handouts. We rolled out 2 programs for our employees in October, the 529 College Savings Program and then a Roth Deferred Compensation Plan. So we've had really good response to the 529. A lot of people are very thankful that we put that forward. And then the Roth also was something that people had been requesting as a post-tax opportunity. So those are 2 things we put forward. Having a retirement session coming the end of this month. There's already 22 participants, which is the full that we can have in capacity, and then there will be several more set up before the end of the year. So that's a good and bad thing. Good that there's people coming to the session means that we're going to have maybe a lot of openings. So when I think about next school year, that's where my brain's going to. We also have a Calm Challenge that started in the first part of October that focuses on the use of the app, looking to target people to use 100 minutes in any kind of meditation or sleep stories or any of the other pieces that they have in that app. We have enrolled 106 employees in benefits since the start of the school year, and now we're preparing for our open enrollment. So it's very busy in the benefits area. You can see our current openings. This was as of last Thursday. Teachers, again, we're doing a pretty good job, and these are more internal movements, or don't have a lot of people leaving, but these are positions that we're just trying to fill, and then they opened because someone moved to a different position. The adult basic education, as I pointed out there, is an ongoing position, so they're they have a little different staffing process, and so they are always looking for teachers to come in to teach the adult basic ed. Non-licensed, as you can see, similar to last month, child nutrition, maintenance, and there's 2 in maintenance open, but we really have like 16 custodian positions open, so it's 1 posting, but there's 16 openings. Playground cafeteria monitor, we're always seeking more, but we do have a good number of them working with the schools, and then of course the paraprofessional. Contract negotiations, the last one we have here is the National Conference of Firemen Oilers Bargaining Unit, and they did vote on September 24th, but they did not pass the proposal, so we have met with the leadership of that union and are working through what that might look for next steps. So hopefully, we've had some really great dialogue, so hopefully we can come up with something here soon before too long to get that settled, because we are already almost 1.5 years in, so we want to make sure we get that one tidied up before we start the next negotiations in a couple of months. And that is my report.
Questions? You're really short food service and custodian. And I know you all are working really hard to fill those, but it's just,
What is the qualifications for food service, for the assistants? Do you have to be 18, do you have to have a diploma?
You don't have to be 18. You know, I'd have to look to see if a GED is required, but I'm not sure about that. But we have also tried to work with our school counselors, because there is some opportunities for work study, and there are some of the kids that want to do some of these things at lunchtime, and just even if it's just an hour or 2, just to get some help in there. So we're trying to look at some other avenues there. So.
thank you.
Noticed in the foyers of the high schools and other places, they have little flyers for the students recruiting them as well.
That's great. All right, seeing no other questions? Oh, yeah, sorry, David.
Can you comment on the substitute contract that we have now, what's it called?
Teachers on call?
How is that working with some of our previous substitutes and previous teachers?
We actually have a really good fill rate from our previous list. When I actually, over the last couple of weeks, did kind of an audit of people we actually paid last year as substitutes, and I think I came up with 8 that didn't sign back on. There's a lot of people on that list in our substitute pool that haven't worked in several years, and so the turnover to going to teachers on call, we have lost probably 8 to 12, I would say, of people that just don't want to go through the process. But for the most part, we actually have a really solid amount of subs and a lot that transferred over.
There were about, I think 100 that were on the list that were not subbing, that hadn't subbed in a couple of years either. So like when we switched over, there were a number of people that had subbed many years ago but hadn't been subbing, that they didn't re-up with teachers on call. We have lost a few people, but I think that for the most part it's been positive. I think too, one of our subs sent a kind of a email of what type of services they provide too, so they give little mini webinars on student discipline and working with challenging students and calming activities and things like that I thought was interesting to see, just kind of a insight there.
Other questions, David? Was your question answered? So moving on now to business services, so why don't we have a finance department report from Executive Director?
Yeah, thank you. I have the summary here. I've included the expenses that our revenue and expense report through September. And that usually comes towards the end, but let me just find it.
Page 14, is that what we're looking at right
Yeah,
now?
thank you. Thank you. So the adoptive budget is the one that our previous CFO brought forth in June. And I've recorded our revenues so far, and this is for July, August, and September. Next month, I'll start including the project on the Hill, our expenses there, that's our Fund 6. And I would like to explain that if you go up to revenues where it says building construction, There is no revenue there, because last year I showed that 31 million. But now down below in Fund 6, I'll start showing you how much we're spending in this fiscal year. And I'll start breaking that down for you next month. And then I will also keep track for you how much we're spending in ESSER funding. Just as a note below here. We are deep in the audit. They're coming back on site next Monday. And every day we are getting information to them, and I'm bound and determined to get this done in a very timely fashion this year.
So just so I'm following along, Executive Director, next month we're gonna have the breakdown of Fund 6 when we talk about expenses
For the project.
for the project.
Yes.
And then you're also gonna start, and thank you for that, the ESSER money.
Yes, I'll start breaking that down by object code for you.
So that is page 14. Are there any questions? Okay, let's move on to our enrollment report.
Yes, we had a great conversation at our CAL meeting. We presented this information.
So it appears that our current enrollment is around 80, let's just say 8,500, and we budgeted for around 8,000.
8,057, and right now, we're sitting at around 211 enrollments high over last year, and we're very happy about that. I think we explained in the COW meeting too, how the AEO and ALC numbers can, we look like we have 21 additional FTE, but it actually, FTE, I call it FTE, ADMs, but it actually, those numbers translate down to 2.1 ADM weighted. And these numbers will change, and we will adjust for them again in the spring if we need to. But right now, it looks like we're on a very positive track.
Is there just a quick explanation? I meant to ask this, I was gonna email Kateri earlier, but the difference, when you're looking at enrollments over ADM and ADM over student, what do those numbers tell us?
Can you tell me which?
So it would be, if we're looking on page 5,
Okay,
the 2 columns on the right-hand side.
so the enrollment ADM.
Yeah, and then the ADM student.
Okay, so they're weighted.
Okay.
That's the best way I can explain it to you. So, a high school student is weighted differently than a regular K through 6 student. And so, when you look at the enrollments, it comes out to 1.36, but actually when it all gets said and done, it's weighted, it's 0.89.
Got it.
Because she averages it out.
So it's essentially how many average daily memberships per student. So if the ADM equaled the student, it would be 1.
Correct.
Okay, that's
And
perfect.
some are at 1.1, 1.2, they're all different.
Okay, that makes sense. I appreciate that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Questions for the enrollment report? David, do you have anything to whip out of your notebook like you did last time with the numbers we were looking for? That was awesome.
Yeah.
All right, great. Let's keep those enrollment numbers. Next, moving on, we have child nutrition.
Yes, Sheila provided a nice report here. 2,900 students have qualified for free meals, 573 have qualified for reduced. We still have 4749 students have not filled out an application this
That
year.
are eligible for free and reduced?
Yes, and so she said that a second mailing was sent to have, who have not renewed their applications for this year, so they're working on that.
I did see both at Piedmont and Lincoln Park, both the principals there really stressing that.
Yeah, they're working hard on it.
they're working hard
really
on it.
trying. Yes, they really are doing a good job. And I know food service is reaching out even on Craigslist to look for hires.
Yeah,
So they're trying.
they're trying.
They're trying.
We appreciate their hard work.
Yes.
And then this is exciting, a fresh fruit and vegetable grant from Myers Wilkins that was awarded, that's around 25,000, that's amazing.
Isn't that wonderful?
Yeah, so that is, fresh food, fresh snacks for the students there.
Fresh fruit and vegetable grant, yes. And, yes, so they'll get a fresh snack a couple times a week.
That's
And
great.
it will also enable us to incorporate fresh garden produce into the mix, which is amazing.
Yep, that's awesome. Any questions on the child nutrition report?
Hi. Does our regular main line, are they including, all you can eat vegetables again now that we're past the COVID part?
That's a really great question. I forgot to mention that I did ask Sheila Oak to come next
Yeah.
month.
Oh, that
So,
would be great.
yeah, she'll, I think it's November 7th is our next meeting. So she said, I'd love to attend. So she'll be here and we can ask her all those great questions.
But I won't be here, so.
I'll
I don't
reach
have my
out to
hip
her now.
replaced, so.
Oh, that's right, so
That's
you're
why
coming to me.
I will forward my questions on.
Okay.
But, and then, I had a question about, unable to start a supper meals program. We do supper meals programs?
There, yes. And-
Okay, what do
but
those
it-
look like?
That's why I wanted Sheila here.
Okay, I will ask that next month.
I'm learning food service as well. In
Okay.
fact, I'll be going down there and actually spending a half a day with her. And I'm going to learn the process as I am going to with transportation. And I think the next month I'll ask maybe we get Steve up here too
Yeah.
for transportation. So I'm going to spend a half a day with her and just learn the program from start to finish. So, and that's why I said, can you come November 7th too and help us understand? But,
That would be great.
okay?
Other questions? Good. All right, moving on to facilities. Mr. Spooner.
Thank you. Under Facilities Management and the Maintenance and Operations Department, we completed 365 work orders and currently are working on 320 open work orders. Under capital construction, the Denville Tower work is progressing well. The tuck pointing is now completed, so the brick work, the masonry work is completed on all 4 sides. And we have the roof and spire and finial need to be installed, which may not occur till next spring. But one thing I wanted to note that's very interesting is the hands on the east face were broken. And it was really complicated to figure out how to get hands made. And we're actually using the CTE program at East High School. Don Simmons, Streeter Masonry picked up 2 boards, which were cedar, 3 feet wide by 8 feet long, 2.5 inches thick. And the kids wrote the CAD program, and they're cutting the hands out that will go on the clock at the end of this week. So we've had kids now that are participating in a project that will be up there for 50 years. I think it's really unique, and the kids were really excited to do that.
That's awesome. That's unity in our community there. East students doing something for the
So I was-
Denville Clock
So
Tower.
really happy.
That's
that
really cool.
That's great.
So the clock tower is going to be done sometime soon. And the Convent Park window replacement project is almost done. That's looking really good. The bathroom at Denfeld will be done by the end of this month. And LTFM projects for next summer are now being discussed. We are still working with our attorney on Lane 1, the PSS track negotiations. And in the construction tasks on the Hill, the final tasks are ongoing in the existing facilities building. Furniture is being installed as of yesterday. We have a good amount of progress on the DSC and transportation building. And you might find it unique to learn that the area of the bus barn on the transportation building is delayed slightly because Portland cement is, you can't get it right now, it's being rationed. So who would have ever thought cement would be rationed, but it is, and we're working through that. Abatement is still occurring at Central High School and should be ready for demo. I wrote this a while ago, but probably 2.5 weeks, 2 to 2.5. Under building operations, our staff have been performing an excellent job. We are, as Teresa mentioned, we have 16 vacancies and many are working overtime. they're doing their best to keep the buildings looking good, and I'm really proud of the hard work they're doing. Overall, at the point that I wrote this report, we had 22 vacancies in facilities, and we're working hard to recruit and fill these positions. In the Health and Safety Department, the SDS database reorganization is underway. The 3-year air inspections are completed. The second safety committee meeting was held, and the East High School, Denville High School should have citation involved employee the ERTK training. That citation has been resolved for the employee right to know. And then the work comp activities are available at the bottom of this page 1 and 2, and I can open it up to questions after this.
So the LTFM projects for next summer, we have a pretty good idea about that because of the 10-year LTFM plan that we.
It's all based on the 10-year LTFM plan, and I'm working with some of the design professionals that will be doing the design and the bidding for that work.
And then you said some OSHA. Did I see a contract in here that had to do with some chemical?
That was for our SDS, the
Our
safety
SDS stuff?
shades.
Okay. And is that separate from the health, safety, and environment management? I didn't know if that was.
It's in the same department.
Okay.
And the bullet point that I identified now in my report was related to a citation that we had. The rules have changed recently where your SDSs have to be, they have to pertain to the exact building, where we had a database that pertained to the district. So the work now is being done to evaluate chemicals by building instead of by district. So we were compliant, rules had changed, we weren't aware, and we got a citation and we fixed it.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Spooner. Are there other questions? Great. Okay to move on to technology? Perfect. We have our technology report right in front of us, and I think you can see all the things that have to do with Google security and account information. And what we're going to go down and look at is the cybersecurity part. We're continuing to work on any security vulnerabilities that we have that were identified by Arctic Wolf, and then this, of course, is important for how we pay our insurance. Continue to work with Benson Electric to move some wireless access points, some new Cisco network infrastructure that's going to go up at DSC, Transportation and Facilities. New AV equipment has been ordered for the DSC school board meeting space. That's exciting, so that we can start live streaming our meetings again once we make it back to DSC. And then also new Panasonic video security equipment has been ordered for the 2 middle schools, and we have most of that equipment. So Bart is out in the world today, so if you have any questions, I'm sure he would love an email that won't get rejected or be identified as spam or phishing. All right, let's move on to transportation. You can see through transportation, we're still expecting our 2 new buses, hopefully in March. They're transitioning to using different software for routing.
That's correct, Transversa.
And that's going to be happening in November and December. There are daily changes on a total of 434 individual routes. That's a lot. 78 trips in September for field trips, and then 79 so far. Okay, got it.
Sports,
All sorts of stuff. So we're still struggling hiring because of ELDT, but I'm sure they'll make it through. Any other questions? Did I miss anything?
The 79 scheduled so far should be October, not
Oh,
September.
October, okay.
Yep.
I was wondering that. Okay, perfect. So I'll make a note of that. That's huge. Okay. Great, transportation. Now we're gonna move on to our recommended resolution. And this is acceptance of donation to the Duluth Public Schools. So you can see that we have donations going to Stowe, Myers, Homecraft, Leicester East, and then a whole bunch that had to do with our unity in our community, which gives me a good list to write thank you notes to.
Wasn't that nice?
Yeah, that's amazing.
We have a number of people that have begun to express additional interest in donation for the coming year, so I think next year will be even
More
robust.
And on Friday, Maurice's will be going around to all of our sites to stock our teacher lunches and drop off hats, mittens, and clothing.
Wow, that's incredible. That's awesome. Great, we'll work on writing some thank you notes.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Was there any cost to the district of that program then?
Yes, there was some cost. Anthony, do you have the cost of the event?
I didn't hear the question fully, from you, John. What was the question?
What was the district cost of the Unity and the Community event?
That's something that I can provide. There was cost, but the costs were offset by all of the donations. So I guess if there's an accounting of that, I would be happy to provide that. Just give me this month to do that, and I'll be ready for the next month.
That works. I like the tree behind your shoulder there, Assistant Superintendent.
It's beautiful.
It's pretty. Great, so that's a recommended resolution. We will also, on the consent agenda, we can look through the HR staffing report. And then Simone already took, are there any questions on the HR staffing report, I guess? Awesome. All right, then we can move on. Simone, or Executive Director, excuse me, took us through the financial report, noting that next month we will start having a breakdown of our Fund 6 and also breakdown of the ESSER money at that point. So the next piece that we have on is the hourly and substitute pay rate sheet. These are increases for FY23. Did we look at these last month?
We did. So the only one that is different, we have had a request to add substitute bus drivers, and we did not have a category for that. So I just wanted to bring it back so that we could add that substitute bus driver.
And I'll point that out on the meeting on Tuesday, just so everybody, great.
Yeah, so that's the only change, and
Okay.
I updated from the last approval, I updated all of the rates into their proper columns, so the only thing changed is what's red.
So the only change is just the sub-bus
Yes.
Sub-bus driver.
And then the pay rate is just based on our maintenance contract, similar to our other substitute positions within the maintenance unit.
And we actually had somebody inquire about substitute busing, which is part of the reason why I thought
That's
we
awesome.
need a
Yeah.
way to go along with that.
Great. Okay. So we've talked about HR staffing, financing, fundraisers. If we look our fundraisers reported, working hard. Looks like Lakewood is working hard to get to Wolf Ridge, huh? That's great. And of course Lester Park in their yearbook. So, any questions? Okay. We have no bids, RFPs, or quotes for this month. Moving on to contracts, change order, and leases. Sitting in front of you, starting on page 19, is the contract for the School Resource Officer Program Agreement. And I just want to go through this real quick, just some clarification for our community so they know the time and effort that went in, both by the Duluth Police Department and the school district in making sure we could get this contract so that it was serviceable and beneficial for both the school district and the Duluth Police Department. Mr. Bonds, can I put you on the spot quick and just quickly talk about, very quickly talk about Marnita's table and all the work and time that we put in and the community, how important community input was as we shaped this contract?
Yes, and thank you for that. And I appreciate the opportunity to do so. And I'll try to be brief. As you are aware, over, I would say a year and a half ago now, 2 years, we engaged in a conversation regarding our school resource officers. And that came out of a request as a resolution from our school board as to support some concerns that community members had regarding school resource officers in our schools. When I joined the school district, I was happy to receive that as a project, and I quickly worked with the team to develop a process for engaging the community in discussions regarding our school resource officers. We quickly developed an advisory team. That advisory team looked at several organizations that would do some community engagement. Marnita's Table rose to the top as our selected organization to do that engagement because of how they approach community engagement. And they did that work for us. So that took about a little bit over a year to engage our entire community regarding our school resource officers. We had conversations in person in various parts of the community at some of our schools. We also had held some stakeholder engagement sessions at organizations in the community, just to make sure we heard all perspectives, because it was really, really critical that we made sure we heard all of our perspectives of our community, and we accomplished that as a district. And so after we received the feedback from Marnita's Table regarding what the stakeholders had shared with us, we developed quickly a summary of a report. The advisory team quickly used that to develop some recommendations that we would move forward to our police department. What you have in front of you is the end result of all of the recommendations, or almost all of the recommendations that were provided by the committee. Most of them are in the contract, and we are very pleased with the end result of the contract and the recommendations that have been embedded in there. And so I'm really pleased with the end product, because I think it really reflects the spirit of all of the work. It really gives us a chance to evaluate the SRO program. It really gives us a chance to work in partnership with our school resource officers and DPD to make sure that they also are fulfilling the things that they want to fulfill, which is community policing. And in our schools, making sure that they support us and the young people that they have to support as well.
Thank you very much, and I just wanted to take a minute and lift up all the work you did with intentionality along with Marnita's Table, and making sure that you went everywhere in our district so that all voices could be heard, and especially voices that are marginalized could be lifted up and really be able to be involved in this process. So I want to thank you and Marnita's Table for that work.
Thank you.
So what we have in front of us is the agreement. This will be for 1 year, and I just want to make one more quick note that most all of the recommendations that came through the work we did with Marnita's Table are put in this contract, in addition looking at ways that we evaluate how SROs are utilized in our schools, so that we can make sure as we set goals that the goals we've set as a district and the data that we get out of our SRO program are matching. So I thank you, appreciate that. Yes, Superintendent Bonds, oh, whoops, assistant.
I know, I guess I know what's happening. Thank you, Mr. Bonds, for taking over. No, but Principal Sebo is here as well, and considering she has perspective as a principal on the SRO programs. Is there anything you'd like to add about the relational aspect of the SROs? Or I've noticed even some changes, even just this year, in some of the SRO way of working with students. I think they've always been relational, but it seems like there's even more focus this year. What are your thoughts?
So I'm fortunate enough to have the longest standing SRO in Duluth Public Schools. So we've had a lot of what you see in the new contract as those expectations are a lot of things that have been happening. We will be much more intentional about documenting it and making sure we're getting to a wide variety of student groups. It's helped us with that partnership to ask him to be here for after school events as well, which is a DPD, has to allow him to work during those hours. So we've had really intentional positive changes already this year, knowing a lot of this was coming and following all of the discussions with Marnita's Table. We did some things internally as well. I'm the only one here. I think we all have conferences and events tonight. There's 2 soccer games, volleyball against Denfeld, the shot clinic and conferences tonight, so it's crazy around here. But I think I speak for my colleagues as well that it's been a pretty positive start to the year. They have a new sergeant, Mike Jambor, and he has spent a lot of time in the buildings as well, getting to know us, getting to see those relationships and how things function in the school. So he's on board and pretty active already. So yeah, it's been a positive process for us too.
And I did see Officer Stopper at Piedmont probably the first 2 weeks of school. He was there a couple times a week handing out stickers to kids, so it was good to see him over at Piedmont as well. Any other questions or comments about the SRO contract?
In the contract, it says that SROs are gonna be evaluated. Do we have any idea of what that evaluation process is going to look like yet, or what you desire to see in an evaluation process?
Yes, actually I have a draft of that. If, I think Brett or Adele, if you could display that for me. I think you also, members here may have received a copy, or they may be handing out a copy to you at this point in time. So I have already developed a rubric that aligns with the contract. It really spells out exactly what we will assess the SRO program on. And it really matches exactly what we have in the contract and some. So I'll give you a minute to take a look at that while we display it for the community, and I'll quickly run through it if you would like me to.
I made that harder than it needed to be.
Brett or Adele, is there a way for us to display it, or would you like to?
Adele is doing it.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. Obviously I can't see everyone, so I appreciate that. So while they're doing that, you'll see board members and anyone else who has a copy of that rubric. It's in draft form, but you'll see that there's a area for that focus on building relationships, and there's some goals that have to accomplish in doing so. And these things all match with what we have decided as a district were important to us. There's an area where it says assessment of the program itself. It talks about a monthly and quarterly meeting to review data. That includes our citation data as appropriate. That's also mentioned and listed in the contract itself. Make sure our principals participate in the personnel evaluations of each SRO. And then also there will be, to be determined, a survey created for our students and a survey created to our families, for our families to also get some feedback on their experiences with our school resource officers. You'll see in here, there's also a section or segment on professional development. In the contract, we asked that our school resource officers participate in school level training. So we have an area for that. We asked that they also participate in training related to implicit bias, restorative justice practices, culturally responsive competencies. And they also make sure that our school resource officer participate in training related to working with students, right? So there's some recognized training on how to work with students as SROs. So we want to make sure that they actually complete that training and more. And then of course we have an area for transparency and communication, because this is something that we said was really important, is to be transparent with all the data related to our school resource officers, as well as make sure we have any relevant information related to who they are as individuals, and any information related to the things that they have been engaged in our schools, whether it's participating in open houses or participating in other student functions, to make sure that that information is also communicated. So we want to make sure that we are totally transparent, and in this rubric, we have a space for us to assess that as well. So the rubric, again, is in draft form, but it's our first attempt to capture the focus area areas and to make sure that we have some metrics that we're going to measure. And then we are going to provide this information at the end of the year or towards the end of the year and have some discussions on, did our school resource officer program meet the spirit of the contract and the goals laid out in the contract?
Thank you, Assistant Superintendent Bonds. Questions?
With the complaint form, I don't know if you knew that was handed out to us this evening. Can you describe what the complaint process will be once a form is submitted?
Yeah, so once it's submitted, right now it's pretty straightforward. Most all complaints come straight to the assistant superintendent. So they come to me, and in this case, they'll be coming to me as well as we have it set up for a couple other individuals, key individuals, to receive that, to make sure that we see that complaint in a timely fashion and respond to it. So all complaints typically come to me. We also have it routed to either, it just depends. It either sometimes routed straight to the superintendent's email as well, or may be routed to Adele, our communications coordinator.
And will you be dealing with each complaint on your own, or is it gonna go through like a committee, or, you know, how are you gonna evaluate whether the complaint is valid or not?
Like normal, I handle all complaints with a process where I start by connecting with the individual who's making a complaint and go through a process where I'm doing a thorough investigation of the matter and documenting it, and then I determine along the way what are the next steps. Sometimes it depends on what's communicated. Things might get resolved with just the complaint coming to me and reaching out to the individual. There could be conversations with the school resource officer. It could be a conversation with the family, and find out what is their desires, what are their desires. So there's a process. Always, step one is to read the complaint, try to get a good understanding of what's being communicated there, and determine my next steps.
And then my last question is, have you set a time of when this will be reviewed and improved, or if any adjustments have to be made for next school year versus this school year, or is it just an ongoing updating process? And how can people contribute to those to that discussion of what could be improved or not?
Are you explicitly talking about the complaint process or the review of the SRO program overall?
The review of the SRO program overall.
So I still will have an SRO advisory team. So the SRO advisory team still will be engaged, and that will be the vehicle that I use to help problem solve, to make ongoing improvements, and to get some feedback on next steps. So I plan on having the SRO advisory team still active and engaged in providing some feedback and so forth. With regards to the process for making the complaint, Adele, are you able to display the website at this time?
Yep, I have it up.
We also have a SR website. So as you recall, one of the things that we are striving to do is to be really transparent, to have great communication around our school resource officers, and we have developed a website or webpage with a lot of information. So I'll stop talking. Adele, do you want to quickly go through, because I can't see it on my end? So can you walk through the webpage for me?
Yep, I can do that. So
Thank you, I appreciate it.
I worked with Maddie, the PIO at the Duluth Police Department. So we have a section that she took photos of each of the officers. You may have seen these photos on social media. So we have photos of each of the officers, and then below their photos we have their contact information, where they're assigned, years in the Duluth Police Department, and years as an SRO. As you can see, Officer Stauber has the most. And then we also have questions that help people get to know the SRO, what their favorite part about working with students is, and why they wanted to become an SRO, as well as one thing they want students to know about them. So we have that for each of our officers. And then over here we have frequently asked questions. So these are the questions that kind of came up during the process along the way with Marnita's table and through the SRO Advisory Committee. So we've added answers to all of these. I just threw these in here real quick. I have to go through them once more with a fine tooth comb to make sure all the police talk is out of them, essentially. So, and then below here, we also have a section called Know Your Rights. This is so that students can come here and basically know their rights when they're called in by an SRO or any officer if they're on the street or at home. And then down here, this is where once the contract's been signed, we'll have a link to the contract. We have the job description, which is the Exhibit A attached to the contract. All of this data is data that we had for hold for Marnita's tables discussions. And then we have a link to our SRO complaint form, which students can fill out online as a digital form, or and then this will go to a folder in Google Drive, which is shared with myself, Anthony, and Anthony's assistant, Kayla Carroll. And then they will also receive an email with the same information that was filled out in this form. And then if they would prefer to fill out a PDF version, they also have the option of downloading that as well.
Thank you for sharing that, Adele. And so as you see, we have been really thoughtful. We believe we've been really thoughtful and really intentional about making sure that we honor again the spirit of the advisory committee, and more importantly, the feedback that we got from our community members, especially community members who feel like they do not have a great relationship with police officers or have concerns about having school resource officers in our schools. We want to make sure that they had, that their voices again were heard, and that through all these efforts, we're demonstrating that we are taking it seriously and we hear them, and we want to make sure that we have a process in place for complaints to be lodged if they need to do so, and that they see all the data that's available. And like Adele shared, we also have information that empowers, saying this, here's some information about your rights when it comes to interacting with police overall, and even our school resource officers.
Great, any questions? I just would have two thoughts, and Anthony, maybe we can talk about this later, is when we get the complaint forms, I'm thinking about process and policy. What policy are we, so somebody has a complaint, and then what jurisdiction do we have over it? Is this information gathering and then conversation having, sort of, because we don't really have a policy or any really agreement with discipline or anything like that, correct? This is really gathering information so we can have conversations with SROs, but we don't really have a policy or anything else with the SROs, correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
So yes, and we do have policies regarding
I mean, I suppose we have an equal opportunity.
any employee interactions.
Okay.
Right.
Oh, that would be under the employee stuff, I suppose, huh?
Right.
Okay.
I would, because they are contracted employees.
So there would still be things like our bias policy, discrimination policy, I would assume, some of those policies. Okay.
And I misspoke. I want to retract that. They are contracted employees. They are not employees of the district, but we are under contract with them in an agreement.
And actually, we are with the policy committee. We're reviewing policy 103 right now, which is on complaints, and I'm just pulling that up right now.
Policy 103 on just general complaints, but not complaints.
Related to students, employees, parents, and other persons. So it does go pretty deeply into how we look at it through human rights lens and who's responsible for it. Actually, our complaint policy has a lot more detail to it than the recommended MSBA policy, and we felt like it was important to keep that.
Yeah, I think I just don't know how our policies, we have a complaint form, we have a set of policies, and then we have a contract with the city, with the Duluth Police Department. I don't know how those three things fit together. So I'm just, and not, because I think the complaint form is exactly, I think we need a clarification of process.
Okay,
Does that make sense?
I agree.
Okay.
Listening to your concerns, I agree that we need to probably just explore that a little further
Yeah.
to clean that up and clarify, and if there's something that needs to be adopted or brought to policy committee or not,
Or
you know,
not,
we
yeah.
need to determine that.
That's the only thing I have. And then just, maybe we want to give ourselves a little bit longer than a week. On the bottom, it says this complaint within a week will be addressed within a week. I might give yourself a titch longer than 5 days, Anthony, maybe. All right.
Exactly. But I think the intention right there was
Yeah.
meant the initial complaint just being responded to.
Oh, okay.
Even if it is simply a communication back that I received it
Yeah.
or that we received it, we will follow back up.
My, I would just say maybe my suggestion is, and again, I believe and think the complaint form is useful and important, but we just need to tighten up some policy, procedure, and use around it, just so we, you know, CYA.
Appreciate it.
I have
Thank
a
you.
follow-up question.
Yeah.
Will the complaint forms be subject to data requests?
Yep.
And can they be protected as employee communications?
That's a good one.
Well, I view this as
Good one.
any complaint that's lodged is handled the same way any other complaint. There are many times when a student or a parent may lodge a complaint against a teacher or a principal, and they name the person, and we handle it in certain kind of ways. So ultimately, some things are, you know, you have the ability to get that information, and things that are personnel related, obviously, personnel related items are not items initially that can be shared or granted.
I'm just concerned, you know, that somebody, you know, will have an issue with an SRO and request all of those documents, you know, or if there's been any complaints, and, you know, should there be any complaints that exist that be used against that person, and whether it's relevant or not, the complaint was still made.
Yeah,
Great. So I would hope that we would be able to redact it anyway, and they would be happy with getting that. I don't know how it would be redacted, I'm not a lawyer, but I would hope it would protect the person, and, you know, especially if it's an unjustified complaint.
I guess I'll just, at least in summary for this piece, I always consult anytime things get any area where I feel like I need to make sure that we are following the right process. I engage our attorney on some of these things, so you can trust that I will do my best to make sure that families and students' rights and issues are addressed appropriately, and with the spirit that in the spirit that needs to be done, as well as make sure our staff and others can expect the same thing as well, that confidentiality is kept, you know, to the level that we can. And so I guess I'll just leave it there.
I mean, any identifying information is considered private data, so that entire top portion would be redacted.
Okay.
And as well as the complaint policy, we're preparing to review the new MSBA data policy as well. We wanted to make sure that we had time as an administration to digest it, but you know, it's further those things are.
And then I'm positive that everybody, but before we put the complaint form out in the world, can we make sure that we have some of these questions just cleared up? So we're not like navigating while we're doing it.
I mean, with only 4 SROs in the district, it's, even the complaint is identifiable, so that would be,
Yeah.
I just wanna follow the letter of the law.
Yeah.
I will connect with I'll seek legal advice on it before we post it.
Thank you, Assistant Superintendent Bond. Any other
Thank you.
questions? Awesome. All right, we can move on to the change order for the boardroom. This would be at the district services building, correct?
Correct.
Anything interesting we need to know, Mr. Spooner?
I'm not sure how interesting, but CFO Erickson and Bart Smith solicited proposals for the furnished installation of equipment. When they had that contract finalized, they gave it to me for inclusion into the project. And after review, I noticed an error in the installation proposal, and that would be that whenever public funds are used for construction of public entities, Minnesota prevailing wage has to be paid, and that was not included in this proposal. So the change order is to bring the labor up to prevailing wage to 32,000. So we're compliant with statute.
So this is a change order in addition, 32,000
On top of the
on top of the
75,000.
75. Okay. Questions?
Do we have enough money to cover this kind of change order?
We do. We're
Okay.
still under budget, under the budget that was approved for the project.
Knock on wood,
But
That's
probably
music
can't, probably can't build the deck.
but. All right, any questions? Member Kirby? Okay. All right, moving on to just a district property update. This is just some work that is been done both at the construction site and then some upcoming construction that's gonna be done, and then also some pretty awesome pictures that were associated with it. Is there anything out of this district property update? Right, is that what I'm looking at?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
pretty self-explanatory, but
Yeah.
I'd be glad to answer any questions anybody might have.
I have a question, should know the answer to this, but the report from Greg Fulmer, there wasn't one attached previously that said pending. Does that change status?
No status has changed. There may have been a clerk layer, but the status has not changed with the current client.
Alright, so then we have our property updates. Next, we look at our expenditure contracts, and we just had a few of those this month, a ton of those. You can look through all of the different expenditure contracts we have this month. Does anybody have any questions?
I actually just wanted to see some clarification about the AVM Industry Group's contract, as it lists it as a specific $30.32 per hour for cleaning services, employees for eight of them, and I would like you to explain the $30.32 an hour.
Sure, I'd be glad to. The 3032 is called a loaded labor rate, and that's what the employee costs the company. I can tell you out of that 3032, $19.25 is the pay rate of the employee, and the difference between that 19 and that 30, roughly 19 and roughly 30, is what the employer pays for health and welfare, FICA, insurance, all the different components that a business owner would have. Just like the district, we may have a painter at $25 an hour, but it probably costs the district $45 an hour because we have the other components that we have to pay. So that contract, the employee under that agreement that you're looking at is being offered $19.25.
Thank you for that.
Other questions? I just want to pull something out of here quick and bring note to it, is the First Witness program that is used in the district, and I can speak really highly. Both my kids have gone through First Witness in the district, and it is very helpful for kids in elementary school, very appropriate and helpful. All right, so we did expenditure contracts. We have 4 no-cost contracts. You can see Minnesota Saves, Arrowhead Juvenile Center, Second Harvest Northern Food Bank, and Fond du Lac Tribal and Community College for Indian education. Any questions on our no-cost contracts? Great. We have no revenue contracts this month. Boo. And then lastly, we have a grant application from the Minnesota Office of Traffic Safety from Mr. Johnson, our Transportation Manager, Simone, our Executive Director of Finance and Business Services, for $250,000 to use for cameras on our buses.
Yes, we're hoping,
Stoplight or arm cameras?
yes, and we're hoping to receive it. We have not heard yet,
Okay.
but we have applied for it, so
That's great. Fingers crossed. We can do that.
When do you expect to hear? I will let you know.
I'm sorry.
When do you expect to hear? Is it just flexible?
I hope by the end of November, but we filled out the application, it was by September 15th and went through the process, so.
And then we'd have to order the cameras and so would they not get on the buses until next year? Or,
Yes.
okay.
I would note, related to grants, just in general, that we have pursued a pretty significant number of grants in the past few years, which is helpful for the district and provides a lot of additional funding and additional supports. Quite often there are accountability measures and bureaucratic work to putting those grants in place. And I do believe in conversation with our teams and also with the state, as we are working on the state identification and working on raising our academics and things, that we have to be a little bit careful, not saying this one because this is specific, but a little bit careful about how many more initiative grant type opportunities we take on, because the cup runneth over sometimes with new projects, and we don't want to have initiative fatigue and overload, even though we all have really good intention. Not to be a Donnie Downer.
Seeing no other thing on our agenda, are there any questions? All right, great, thank you everybody, meeting adjourned. Thank you, Mr. Bonds, thank you, Danette, if you're still there.
Thank you.
Thank you.